Hype Man, Raj Nation, the GOAT to market. From Hype HQ in Chicago, Illinois, Startup Hypeman presents the GOAT to Market Show. What's up, everyone? I am your host, Raj Nation, the founder and chief pitch artist of Startup Hypeman. This podcast is where we bring you founders, company leaders, and creatives who are building it, who are doing it, who have been there and done that. And they pull back the curtain on their go-to-market strategies so that you can build a venture that you love and become the GOAT of your industry. Want first listen on episodes before anyone else? Subscribe to our newsletter at startuphypeman.com. You will get alerts every Sunday morning when we release new episodes. All right, let's hear how today's guest is becoming the GOAT. Ladies and gentlemen, making his way to the microphone from Chicago, Illinois, he is the content artist of Startup Hypeman, the head of community at Startup Grind Chicago, and the senior product marketing manager at BeeKeeper. Please welcome Sid Khaitan.
Ooh, yeah. It's just like me and my dog in here, and we're pumped up.
My friends, he is Sid Khaitan, as I mentioned. Before we get into our conversation with him, do me a favor and ring that subscribe and follow button like it's an opening NASDAQ bell so you don't miss another episode of this show, because I know you're about to love this conversation I'm going to have here with Sid. As I mentioned in the introduction, he's Sid Khaitan with BeeKeeper. He's also supporting and helping me out with Startup Grind Chicago, as well as on the Startup Hypeman team as our content artist, writing kick-ass brand manifestos, developing really strong customer stories, and more for our clients. And I asked Sid to join the podcast today because one of the things that I've been really impressed with in working with him over the last year pretty closely is his ability to not just take something and do it, but then figure out what else can be accomplished with just one small sort of ask or task. Rhyme not intended there. Now, as we were talking about this episode, Sid, you brought up something that you've been really hot on recently, which is an entirely new sort of go-to-market strategy, if you will. And it's G2C, go to customer. So today we're going to focus on building a go-to-customer strategy. Once again, welcome to the show. Why is this on your mind, and why is it important to you?
Thank you very much, Raj. As I mentioned, my dog and I are in here hyped. I feel like I'm in a stadium and I'm about to box someone. So excuse me if the adrenaline's just amping up here, but go to customer. So I'm, as a senior product marketing manager, I am wary of adding more three-letter acronyms to the mix. But as this idea started to come to me and I talked to a lot of founders and I've been noodling on it, it couldn't have been a better time. You were asking me what would I like to talk about? I was like, whoa, I have been thinking about this. And let me define it and do my best to do so. So a lot of the founders, a lot of even early stage startups, mid-stage startups that I work with, mostly Series B, Series C, I often hear this idea of we went to market, right? That everything is, we talked to the market, we told everyone what we do, but how are we going to customer, G2C? So when I think of go to customer, I think of program market fit instead of product market fit. And what I mean by that is often we are talking about the technology and the tooling first, where from a customer's lens, they're thinking about the program. I'll give a few examples. So this one's a little meta, but at the company I'm currently at, we're launching a customer advocacy platform. But before we got to platform, the last year and a half was spent creating customer stories, getting sales reps to buy into those stories, creating a program for distributing those stories. And now it's like, oh, we've done the process manually. We know what it's like. Now we can add tooling in front of it to make it better. Similarly, with employee advocacy, a lot of folks will say, yeah, we need to get our employees to post more, or even a founder. And a lot of times they'll say, let's go get this tool. Let's go get this fancy tool. Sprout Social costs $10,000, whatever. Actually, a lot less, but that's besides the point. Um, they're going to think I'm just like an anti-Sprouts Social guy. That's not
Just
true.
throwing
It's not
shade on
true.
him unnecessarily.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great tool. But before you get an employee advocacy tool, you need to come up with the system. How do we get our employees bought in to posting every day? Do they have people and examples to reference? What's the philosophy behind this? So if all this put together is just this idea that we are so often as founders, as product marketers, we're thinking about our product, but we're not necessarily going and inserting ourselves into the customer lives. And I'll just say, like, I'm part of the problem as well. Like, it's very hard to keep your mind in the customer land. I was talking to a mentor yesterday, and something that I'm trying to work on is like true customer advocacy, where you have customers post about their success with the product. All right, we created these awesome stories. Now, how do we actually ask them to go post about it? And really, the question is, what is the incentive? So I, instead of just like guessing, which is what I've been doing, it's like, oh, they probably want a gift card, or they probably just want to have their name seen in a cool place, give themselves credibility. My mentor said, why don't you just ask them? Why don't you run a survey and say, here's the goal we're trying to do, we're trying to accomplish. What would motivate you to want to do this? So the whole idea is, instead of marketing to people, you're partnering with your customers to really understand what do they want and how can you co-create things. So especially after you found this product market fit, this program market fit, let's say, now is like a great time to really insert yourself into that first customer's life, that 10th customer, if you have them, and not just go for, hey, let's create a bunch of customer stories that validate what our product does, but instead do all the wraparound work, the scaffolding, to understand where did this customer come from? What are the problems they're trying to solve, all the way through to where they are today, with your product just being kind of a nice to have as part of this whole process. Because without that, really what we run the risk of is just kind of touting ourselves, being very surface level in a world where we are very kind of whatever, our BS radars are very much in tune. So when we see, oh, like this customer said this product is awesome, you start to wonder what's going on in the back end. How much do they get paid to say this? Is this really sincere? Are they using the product as much as they say they are? Instead, as a prospect or customer, I want to hear the whole story. Tell me why they started even looking for this tool. What made them do this? How did that champion convince their boss to even pay for this tool? Where did the budget come from? Those are the kind of questions I want answered when I'm trying to buy something. So all of this kind of came to fruition as I started to look at it from both sides, because I'm working full time at a company, and I do end up buying software, and I'm in those conversations. On the other hand, I'm advising early stage founders and others to create more content and work with their customers. But what I often see is the disconnect is product first, always thinking about your product and what you're building. And on one side is the buyer, who is completely inundated. And like, we talk about buyer enablement, stuff like that has like started to become part of the conversation, but it still misses the fact that you just have to go to the customer and understand how they think. And instead of focusing on validating their experience, approaching it as an investigative journalist and saying, here, I'm going to try to learn about your life and follow you around and be able to support you, instead of always asking for that support and searching for that validation.
All right, podcast over. You answered all just one question. Great. See you tomorrow.
Oh.
All right. No, that was super good. So we're gonna unpack all those points a little bit more. Before we get deeper into that, let's introduce you, Sid, the person, to our audience a little bit more. A lot of people in tech have I don't know if the word traditional background is the right word, but their background is like they went to a 4-year college. Maybe they had a pretty high GPA. They were part of some clubs and things like that. And then they got into whatever they were doing professionally. You've got a pretty interesting story, though, on the education side, at least, that it has some like twists and turns that I think gives you a really unique perspective it gives you a very dynamic perspective, actually. Would you mind just sharing like that sort of background and how you feel that has shaped the way you think today?
So many twists and turns. Okay, so I'll start from where it probably gets interesting or relevant. I think the background is I grew up in an Indian immigrant family. My parents came here from across the pond, and it was winter, and they had flip-flops on. That's how much they knew when they came to this country, and shortly after they had me. So I was very much an experiment. But one thing, of course, was like education is everything, right? Like, don't do your chores. I don't care what happens as long as you do well on the test. So I got really good at that and kind of listening to directions as well. Junior year in college, or sorry, in high school, two things happened that were important. One is I got a 35 on my ACT because I became like an incredible test taker. But once again, that doesn't mean anything, as you'll find out. The
ACT's out of
second thing was,
36, right?
yeah, exactly. So
Wow.
35 out of
35 out of
36.
36. Give this man a medal.
Yeah, right. It's coming in handy every day. No, I'm just kidding. But so that happened, and then two was I started a supplement business. So I became a gym bro, quote unquote, and started my own supplement brand and apparel line, and started selling protein tubs. So at that time, like there was a lot of cognitive dissonance, as you can see. On one end, like I'm getting prepared to go to engineering school, college, and on the other is like I just want to be an entrepreneur. I'm ready to go. Like, what is all this other test taking and nonsense? But where that took me was into a really weird arena where I went to University of Illinois, Champaign, as a civil engineer. By the time first semester was done, my GPA was a 0.38. I didn't even know that was possible. I
Neither
did
did
not
I.
go to, yeah, exactly. I think I might have hit a record. I need to go ask them. Maybe they'll listen to me this time. But yeah, 0.38. I basically it just didn't go to class. I think like I did go to a few, but it was a dark time to be honest. Like personally, and then of course from a college standpoint. So I failed completely. Came back home. It's like, all right, let's reorient what I want to do. Ended up bouncing around community colleges. Ended up taking like so many odd jobs. Like by the time I got to DePaul, I had like eight of my own clients doing writing work, like design work, sales stuff, all while still having this business. And then like one day I woke up, graduated from DePaul, and I was like, okay, I don't want to do the supplement thing anymore. It was a really cool experiment. Really learned a lot, made a decent amount of sales. But I just realized like I'm not the one to want to do this 20 years from now. It's just not my cup of tea. From there, just yeah, kind of that's where it starts to get more traditional, where I ended up working at an
Yeah.
agency, worked in some startups, and that all got me here today. I'll skip the less exciting and dynamic parts.
Um, when you, I mean, is the term, can we, for all intents and purposes, say you failed out of U of I?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you failed out of U of I and you go home, what was the reaction like at home?
Oh my gosh. Uh, not even at home, right? They had to pick me up from campus.
Oh,
My parents are two loving parents. Like I'm not in like a weird situation. There was a lot of distress happening at home. But yeah, they had to pick me up. And at that time, like that is when it hit, right? Like they show up on campus and I'm like, oh wow, I messed up so bad. Like that's where the guilt really hit. Because here's these two people that like I had all these problems with, but they were actually like the support system and wanted to, at the end of the day, they're like the last line of defense. I had to go home because school did not want me anymore. My friends, of course, like I'm not going to see them as much, but now I'm coming back home to like literally live with my parents for a little bit. So it was horrible. It was like this horrible feeling. And I like at first it was a moment of, yeah, just sadness and guilt. Eventually it became this like realization of that same cognitive dissonance and like how it kind of manifested itself into my life. Like, and I needed to avoid that. And I think like since then, I've tried to be more intentional about how I think of things. It's like if I'm doing this, but this is the way I think or like how I really want to be living, then I'm doing something wrong. So an example would be like, okay, I want to work with startups. Cool. I want to be a founder. I want to do early stage. Now, if I'm working at some agency or working in corporate, eventually that is going to catch up to me. Sure, I can go learn what I want to learn and think of it as a strategy to get to where I want to. But if I just stay here and I don't have very solid plans for how I'm going to get to here, then I'm going to burn out, or like something very similar is going to happen. So that to me was like kind of the lesson and the feeling that I think still informs, a lot of things that I do.
Very interesting. And I'm sure there's plenty of Indian parents. Well, plenty of Indian parents don't listen to this show, but if they do, they're clutching their pearls as they hear that. Because scoring high on the ACT was the goal.
Exactly.
Right? And I don't think what did I get? I got either a 27 or a 28, which was in my house was like kind of a disappointment. Especially because I think my brother might have gotten like a 30 or 31. So yeah, definitely not making into the 30s was a kind of a big deal. But
oh my gosh, I still remember when I got the test results, like I get home and my parents see it, and it's like first thing my dad says is, why 35? Why not 36? What's this?
No way.
They didn't even know what it was actually out of.
They gave you the A-. Where's the A+ on the 35?
Exactly. Exactly. They literally, I think my dad went to the neighbors, and the neighbor had to explain that it was out of 36. So then the first reaction is, why not a 36? Why 35? And yeah, the second was like, oh wow, so I don't need to like go like punish my kid. Got it. Like, this is bizarre. Absolutely bizarre.
Okay, so with that context or that background, we're not going to necessarily go into it in detail, or I want to bring everyone up to speed who's listening. You've worked at a handful of different tech companies, one of which during, I would say probably like their rise to fame was Chili Piper, working on the sales and the product marketing side for them. Now with BeeKeeper, and then as I mentioned in your introduction, some of the stuff you're doing with Startup Hypeman and Startup Grind Chicago. So what you've been very close to throughout this journey is the end customer of the product that is being sold, which I think a lot of times there's people who are pretty detached from the end customer, or they like in whatever role they have at the company, or maybe if they're on the sales team, they only know them in the sales process, and then they never see them or talk to them again because now it's been passed off to another person. I'm curious to get your take on, how do you think an organization should be like structured or should function if the goal is to center, your operations around the customer?
That's a good question. So I think what happens in most orgs, now being part of at least 3 or 4, is the problem is all at the handoffs. So first, when marketing kind of hands off the deal to sales, when sales works the deal, wins the deal, then it gets handed off to the CS person. Then the CS person working the account, really helping drive activation. Either they're handed off to the account manager, or there's just this like kind of light link between both groups. And all of the friction and all of the problem is happening at those handoffs. What I mean by that is, when marketing goes to sales, it's the same thing where, hey, this ad drove this person into this deal. Now go close that. There's no discussion about what's going on with the customer. We're not learning. Most organizations aren't thinking about, oh, like what should we actually pass along that's important to understand about this customer outside of their tech stack, or like even in the SDR discovery process. You get to the surface level, hey, they have a pain, hey, they have a potential champion, all of that, but not how does this company actually make decisions? Who needs to be involved in order to actually push a deal through? And once again, what is the backstory? Most importantly, actually, what is the backstory to lead them up to this moment? Why did they start evaluating a tool in the first place? And usually what I found is like, no one has a good answer to that. How do we even get here in the first place? Okay, we came here to buy lead routing software. Okay, well, like, how mature is your sales team? How long has it been growing? What are the current leads look like? What were you doing before? All of these questions often are not asked, or not asked properly. And even when they are, that information is not passed on to the next team. Mm-hmm. So that's just like marketing SDR to AE kind of situation. Sorry, I'll just stop using acronyms. Sales development representative to account executive. Now, account executives now have, I would say, like a really good line of sight into the business at that stage. They've done all their work to do the discovery, to sell them on the product, to understand how the product is implemented into the organization. Now, once that information is going to a CS or account manager, unless you have like a team of 5 or like 10, that information is being passed through maybe one call, maybe 2 calls, or once again, like systems, Salesforce to PlanHat to others, where like the notes don't do any of us justice. There's a lot more context and missing information that never makes it through. So now you've passed on this deal. Once again, the account executive is focused on today and maybe yesterday. CS team has to think about before as well. And now we're thinking about now in the future, the CS team now needs to start making the conversation about every day is an opportunity to either have that champion feel like they should feel regret or that they should feel conviction that we made the right decision. Now, what usually happens is the CS team is just like focused on product adoption, right? Let's get them to use the product. Let's get them sticky. When it comes to the account manager's work at renewal, what proof does the account manager have to say, hey, it's time to renew? So some of this was a little abstract. So let me start at close one opportunity. You have a new customer. CS is focused on getting this new customer using your lead routing solution. Now, at some point, at year 1, the account manager steps in and has to say, hey, are you ready to renew? Spend another $20,000 with us? Hey, maybe we have to upsell to a new pricing plan. At that time, a lot of people will say the conventional thought is pull out the ROI numbers. All right, show me how much this tool has improved my company. And that is when every account manager is like, what? Like, I don't know where that information lives. These days, people will pull out some spreadsheet and say, here's like this, made up number that says how much ROI you've made. The reason that's not happening properly is because there's no, on closed one date, there's no plan to say, hey, as a CS team, we have to make sure this program works, not just the product, not just the stickiness. We need to have a full wraparound service of, okay, we have a champion. We need that person to look good because they're the ones who bought the software. And to do that, we need them to have a program in place. So not just the software, you need the whole wraparound kind of plan where this person is not only implementing the product, but also making sure that all of the outcomes that are promised by the product are actually happening. And that's where I find like a lot of the pain and like kind of lack of clarity or lack of kind of connection between those teams, because once again, everyone has different kind of incentives and goals. And if you don't start collecting this data from the customer on day 1, hey, this is what your current retention rate looks like. Now let's start looking at your day 90-day retention. Let's start looking at your 180. And then a year from now, I can show you how much money you've saved. Then you kind of fight a losing battle. And there's a lot of reasons why this doesn't happen, which I can explain. But as a foundational standpoint, I think the issue is all about the handoffs in this process. And I'm trying to apply this to the founder world, but like at the end of the day, even as a founder, your customer is going through all these stages, and you have to make sure it's a clear, cohesive experience for them, not just on your product's timeline, but on their own timeline.
Well, even as I hear you explain this, it makes me think about what I can do with our Startup Hypeman team to have a better handoff process, right? Like we have, in our system, once a customer has filled out their onboarding form, then I forward that with a custom email that I'm writing, giving some background context on who this customer is. But I'm not really going into like hey, why did they come to us in the first place? And that's, written down in my notebook, and maybe I've transcribed that into Pipedrive after a meeting. Probably I haven't. So now you've even got me thinking about how do I improve that process to help everyone on our team succeed even more with our customers.
Yeah, because it's all about context. And I think some of that just gets, kind of lost between the handoffs.
I feel like it's almost because we're so like, well, one is, everyone's busy. so things fall between the cracks. But if we park that excuse for a moment. I almost feel like because companies, rightfully so, are so like results oriented, we just start thinking about where does this thing need to go? Where does it need to go? What is the future state? How do we get them to the future state? And we don't, to your point, it's like we don't realize the impact of understanding the current state, especially if it's software that's being sold, because it's like, well, no, they're just going to they're going to log in and they're going to achieve their own success through this software.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where everything goes wrong. Like in my role as a product marketer, I think that's often ignored. Like a lot of product marketers focus on the inbound piece. Let's go focus on marketing and sales. But CS, or customer success and account management, that's like really where I think I've spent the most time. And I realize now that that's very rare. That's where a lot of this thinking comes from, because I think we just like assume that either like it's customer success is a catch-all, or like the customer will just figure it out, because we're kind of in a world of like, hey, we just need to do enough. And like obviously marketing and sales often calls for more help because they need it to generate more pipeline. And then when you have the customer, you just start to be like, yeah, they'll figure this out. Like we can give them guardrails, we can give them templates, but at the end of the day, it's like all based around a product. Whereas what they really need is the help creating the program. And especially today, where it's like we're going to start seeing a lot of Me Too products, right? There's like 10 different software you can get in one category. The way to stand out is to help them build the program, because that is how salespeople also stand out, right? If you're talking to three, it's in the challenger sale, there's this whole concept of sense making, right? You have to not only talk to this customer about, hey, these are your options, and like show them all this thought leadership stuff. You're supposed to make it simple for them. Here's like 5 different options at the end of the day that you can choose in the market. And then here's why this is the best option for you. And all of that point perspective comes from understanding the program, the discipline. So when we talk about customer stories, it's not just the tools, it's understanding how to do the thing. If we're talking about Riverside, it's not about, hey, I know how to put people in a studio and start recording. It's about the podcast kind of series. How do you build it? How do you do some of that? And we're kind of, we're basically taught to like figure it out on your own, which totally, I think customers should add their spin. But the more we can do to add utility and value in terms of how to build the program in the first place and wrap our product into the center of that, I think that not only impacts, what we're talking about here, marketing, sales, customer success, it helps generate and guide where the product is headed.
As we think more about that program side versus the product side, I want to just talk to our listeners for a moment, because product is so fundamentally important, especially as you're trying to get your startup off the ground in the first place. And what's funny is you find yourself in this situation where everyone else thinks things are going amazing, right? Yacht parties, fast cars, fine dining. Everyone else thinks that's startup life. But as founders, we know it's more like late nights, public transit, and ramen noodles. Building a disruptive product really is just grossly underestimated and requires a rare combination of skill and experience. But you never know what you're going to get with an offshore team. That moonlighter you're working with who said they're good for it is ghosting. And accelerators really only step in for a piece of the action. Not only that, they will guide you, but they will not build for you. It really feels like everyone who can help wants money or equity or both, and any wrong decision puts the launch at risk. But there is another way, and that is to lift off with Code Launch. And I'm excited to introduce Code Launch as a new partner of our podcast. Code Launch is the only equity-free accelerator, pitch competition, and exposure platform, all wrapped into a venturetainment spectacle. Selected startups get free, yes, you heard this right, free software development from trusted firms. Then they pitch and demo their product live on stage to hundreds of stakeholders, and they compete to secure an investment on the spot. When you make moves with Code Launch, you're closer to turning those not invites today into yacht invites tomorrow. Code Launch is a partner now of the Startup Hypeman Go-to-Market show and a lot of the Startup Hypeman platform at large. That also includes at all the 2025 code launch events. You'll see me, Raj Nation, on stage as the event MC, and live music performance as part of the action. If you are in a situation where your product could use support, where you could use and benefit from free software development, no cash, no equity taken from you, if you think you could join the likes of past code launch champions like Materia Bioworks, Endora, and Caracorder, and others who have lifted off with the help of Code Launch, I recommend you look into Code Launch ASAP. We code, you launch. Listeners of this show can have their application fast-tracked for review and consideration simply by using the link in the episode bio. We code, you launch. You can learn more at codelaunch.com. And again, use the special link in the bio to have your application fast-tracked considered to enter your specific area's Code Launch regional. Today on the Startup Hypeman Go-to-Market Show, we are with Sid Khaitan, who is a content artist on my team here at Startup Hypeman. He's also the head of community for Startup Grind Chicago and a senior product marketing manager at BeeKeeper. And we're unpacking this concept of a G2C, go-to-customer strategy. Now, in building out this strategy, what we're talking about is the idea, we've talked about the idea of the program market fit versus product market fit. I want to double click on that for a second. Before the break, we were talking about this idea of the program market fit versus the product market fit angle. I want to get your take on, so I've long held this belief that product market fit is actually the wrong term, and we should be looking to achieve problem market fit. And if we do that, we actually create product market pull. Deny or accept that thesis and build on that?
This goes back to you already went to market and now it's time to go to customer. So I totally agree. I think problem market fit comes first. And that's why I'm kind of like, my focus is usually going to be like founders and startups that I've met after they're at product market fit, problem market fit, let's say. Because I think there's two parts to it, right? First, you have problem market fit. Hey, there's a problem that's been identified and people need a solution. Great. Now, once you dive into that solution, yes, your product is a piece of it, but the program is the bigger kind of convincing point. And I go back to this example of customer stories, right? Before you can acquire the customer stories tool, you need to have the program in place to be collecting customer stories. You need to have your sales team bought in that you need customer stories, all of that. And even further up is the problem market fit. So do you know that people actually have this issue? Can you at least start talking about it? So like it is almost kind of like that funnel as well. In that problem market fit is first, but then it's program market fit, and then it's product market fit. And if you start thinking of it like that, you are also reversing the funnel, because it's like, that's where your product actually fits, right? If you don't convince someone that the problem is important and the program is important, you might be able to sell the product, but you're not going to renew and retain that customer because they don't have the program in place. And that's where we go wrong, right? Like when we talk about people, process, then tech, it's people, process, then tech. It's not flipped. And often that's what we do. People put, the tool, the SaaS tool, in front of the process and system for how to do it. Employee advocacy is the best example that I can come up with, which is someone buys the tool thinking it's going to solve their problem, but they don't have the process in place, the program in place to actually succeed with employee advocacy. They haven't gotten the buy-in from all their employees, their employee base. That itself is a huge mindset shift and discipline to get into. And that is why you might buy an employee advocacy tool. I'm not going to use their name again, but you buy it on day one, and then you churn a year from now because you aren't able to see the success, because you're trying to build the program while you already paid for the tool.
So people, processes, then tech. Program is probably a combination of people and processes. A lot of this, I have to imagine, it's not like all of a sudden you get to a certain size and then you start doing things like the quote unquote like wrong way. It's happening from like a day one, like when the company is still pretty small. So if you are resource short, let's say your company is under 20 people, maybe it's under 10 people, and you want to make sure you're not just getting customers, but you're actually setting yourself up to get more customers and continue to grow, what are the tactical things you can start putting in place today, given you might not have 5 different departments who can, you can click together like Lego pieces?
Yeah, great question. Um, and I think like to set up a system or process doesn't need to be like super comprehensive. It's almost like doing the consulting work, right? Like acting as though you have like a mini Gartner consultant with you. Like it just takes a few slides, right? Like for me to explain how employee advocacy works, it's like here's like some of the best knowledge on the internet. You don't even need to do it yourself. These days you get all of that stuff for free. That's kind of what people just need to be guided towards. Once again, that idea of sense making, like find the clarity in your own head. What does implementation look like? Either way, you need to have a clear answer for this. If you can put it into a slide, into a tool, you're way ahead of the game. And I would like to say, like, I've been experimenting with this a lot, and you can also use AI for some of this. I used a tool like Lovable. You can start to mock up these types of like mini tooling or like kind of internal tool sets for free or close to free. So I just think like that is to me a pretty smart use of AI where like you have the ideas. Hey, we do need an implementation checklist. We do need a best practices guide or a like starter kit for employee advocacy, for customer advocacy. We need to communicate with our reps and why this is important for them to do. All of those things you can create for the customer at a pretty low cost and with limited resources, I think, today. And once again, either way, you have to think about it. So if I was a founder, for example, I would just create the checklist as a part of a LinkedIn post and then send people there as a starting point. Then, yeah, you can put that same post into a Gamma presentation and have it spit out like a cool slide. But once again, that is the program. And then your product just fits right into it. Usually the best practice is never like a super complicated thing. You already did the hard work of building the product. Now it's just like the wraparound, the extra 20%, the last mile delivery that makes it like click for the customer. Hey, this is how I get buy-in. This is how I implement the product. This is how I make sure it's a success.
This is making me think about how we carry customers through our process at Startup Hypeman. And I'd say we do a pretty good job at it. And obviously there's always room for improvement, but some of the feedback we often get is like, our clients are always like, I always know what to do next or what's happening next. I'm never really lost as to where we are in the process and the project overall, which is something that I'm really, I really appreciate that we get that feedback, and I'm proud that we've built, enough of a system that it creates that, that people feel held. And I think that's kind of that's the word that just came to mind for me, but I really think that's what I'm gathering here is, how do you make your customer feel held? And software alone is not going to do that. And if you're a smaller team, like to your point, it doesn't need to be sophisticated. Like in our case, it's the moving them through the process is a series of emails. And those emails are templates we've created in Gmail that you can one click populate and then just swap out, the specific language of first name or company name or whatever that might be. And then at the same time, internally, we have our like Asana project board where we're alerting like the next person on the team, hey, this thing is done. Now it's your turn. And when I want to say the first 2 to 3 years of doing Startup Hypeman, that wasn't the case. I didn't have a Asana board. So there was no like talking between teams of what was happening at any given time. And then also, I don't know if we even had, I might have been custom writing like the emails each time, or it was kind of like, okay, now you're at this phase. Let me send you that email. And I would just like, I would like type it up and send it out. So I think some of those like operational things that they're not very sexy, but they help the customer not get bogged down in unnecessary like failure points or friction points.
That's exactly
Um,
it. I mean, if you think about the customer, right, your product is just one of their 20 other jobs that they're doing full time and like trying to impress their boss or whatever else they got going on their plate. So it's like, and the thing is, as a founder, you probably know the program. Like to build the product, you have to understand the process at some level. So a lot of this is the assumptions that we've made that, oh, the customer will figure this out. Like they'll know how to implement it. It'll just solve itself. So the thought has already been had of how to do this. It's just a matter of putting it on paper. So like
yeah.
that's the best part, and it's just removing that extra cognitive load that as a founder you might think is just like an itch, but it's really like someone clawing at you because it's just making their life so much more confusing because they are not experts. They don't think about the problem you think about all the time as a founder. So like that's why, as you're saying, as you started to build some of these processes out, it just makes it so much easier. And yeah, your team's going to love you for it and your customers will too. And I know this firsthand because when I joined with Startup Hypeman, uh, like the first few, whatever, like brand manifestos and some of the work I did with founders, I was like pretty amazed at how happy they were when I just started because once again, the process was defined and they knew where they were going to go next. They knew what this was going to help them accomplish. Like that context had already been set. So
Mm.
now all they have to do is look at the product and be like, this is good. Like, I like this. And the person followed the process and the instructions. So there's no surprises. And I think that adds like a level of, like trust. Once again, if we go back to that idea that the second you buy something, every day, every minute after that is, did I make the right decision or do I have buyer's regret? And if
Yeah.
you always show up with one extra step and show conviction, yeah, like this makes sense. I'm buying this. This person already thought of this. Like no surprises. Then every moment is just it's escalating and it's getting exponentially more trust versus any times those breaks that all of a sudden is like, I don't know if I can really trust that I made the right decision.
It's kind of like I think about this every now and then. Like nobody wants to feel had, and the less sort of support or holding, again to use that phrase, the less feeling held your customer is, the more they okay. There's some alliteration there. The less feeling, the less held they feel, the more had they will feel, and that's where it's not just that they become a sort of resigned emotionally customer, is they start actually bad mouthing you, not to your face, but like, I don't know, I wouldn't buy from them. It didn't, I didn't have a great experience.
Yeah, I think that's fire. Yeah. Don't get had. You want them to be feel held because like as buyers, we feel that all the time, right? The second you buy something on Amazon or whatever else, you're like, oh, like, did I make the right decision? It seemed right. You compared 20 different options today instead of three. And it's like you have so many choices. So why should I keep choosing this specific solution? You have to make the case for it. And like it's not even the hardest part of the job. Like the product's already been built, you just have to show people how to use it. You just have to fit into their context of their lives, and that's where people like me come in.
Yeah. Two other quick things I just want to add on to that is, as I think about, again, our processes as a company, um, what I was intentional about from the start, once I built out these like steps, was making it a branded experience from start to finish. And so what does that mean? Like, I think right? The email signature we have is stay hyped, right? That's the sign off. And then it's like your name. When they get onboarded, the first onboarding email they get is, it has a meme of The Rock with a championship belt, and it's like, we're excited to turn you into the world champion of your story, is what the opening line of the email says. I also make sure to tell our operations coordinator that they should never get the invoice before they get the onboarding email, because I don't want the first thing. I mean, yes, they know they've contracted with us and they need to pay, but I don't want the first thing they get is requests for payment before they get something that they can take action on. And that invoice email comes like literally within a minute of the onboarding email. But I think it's important that it does come second and not first.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, and the branding part is tough. So yeah, I see it with what you've done, and I definitely appreciate it. Not my swim lane. My swim lane is to build the tooling to help people actually create the experience. But like, yeah, you're creating the experience in every brand interaction, and I think it shows up. Yeah.
And it's also like iterative too. Like, we talked about a minute or so ago, like, hey, like you've probably got it in your head, now just write it down. There are things I have changed or improved over time. And I think like we get so caught up in it has to be perfect the first time, but you have to have something, some, whatever you want to call it, process playbook to go off of. And once you start using that, then you're like, oh, I need to add one more step here. Or, oh, this was kind of confusing. Let me rewrite that. Let me give a tutorial video here because when I showed it to someone else, they didn't know what it meant. Right? It takes creating something to figure out how you're going to optimize it.
Yeah. And to be honest, this has a lot to do with like kind of assumptions that go unsaid. Like we just assume the customer doesn't, it can do this on their own. The customer doesn't have any problems here. That's where research comes in and becomes so important. So like that's how I typically go about discovering this type of stuff is by doing that research with customers, so that they understand. Oh, like as a founder, it's like, oh, this is what I should focus on. Got it. If not, it's like, oh, why should we go and create this complicated implementation guide or simple implementation guide? They figured it out. Look, we have 20 customers. Well, if you talk to those 20 customers, they'll tell you they all did it this different way. They had issues along the way. That's where like customer insights, actual customer stories, actual research comes into play. And yeah, helps you test these assumptions as a founder.
You got time for one more and then our wrap up or straight to wrap up?
Sorry, you do one more.
Okay. So, how does, real quick here, in a go to customer strategy, how do you, or what are some ways you can incorporate generating referrals or promoting these customers' stories out to, the universe at large? And because process is one side of it, but also success is the other side. So how do you actually showcase success beyond just like putting logos on your website of customers who have worked with you before?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is kind of what we talked about, really owning customer stories, as in taking the investigative journalism approach. You know this better than most since we've worked on some of this with actual early stage founders, but it's like, let's create something that is more, in fact, I'm inspired by the way you've done it, which is let's create something that's more than a, case study that's going to sit on the site. This is a sales conversion focused page that we're not trying to sell you anything really, but we're trying to show you how this customer actually got value from this product and why, if you are this type of person, you might be interested in this. So like, it's very much taking what product marketers know of like positioning, messaging, all this other stuff. Even founders work with this kind of stuff, and putting that all into a customer story from top to end. You start with problem market fit, then you start with programs, because each of these customers has a specific program they're trying to, a playbook they're trying to incorporate. And now all of a sudden your product is inserted into there as well. So it's, first of all, learning how to tell the story and creating those foundations so you have the right kind of body of work to then go promote and distribute. On the second kind of, I would even say this is more of like a split where one side you're doing the customer stories, the other side is the research. So all of the research you get from talking to these customers, for having them really understand their process, you start to understand, once again, those untested assumptions. So what are these customers missing or do they need in order to like really get their job done better? So you can support them when it gets closer to renewal. They're happy now. They took on the call with you to do a customer story and do an interview with you. But are they going to be 3 to 6 months from now if you don't do these few things for them, create this type of collateral, do this extra service or whatever that might be? Now you have the kind of external facing body of work and the internal insights required to create the most important things that the customer cares about. So first things first, I think you just turn all of these stories into some sort of playbook, into some sort of industry perspective. So let's say you did 3 different interviews and created 3 different stories. Really think through, okay, what made all of these different customers different? And turn that into like a unified source of um, insight, but also like, here's the playbook if you're trying to run these 10 different plays. If you're trying to, you know, do employee advocacy at a small company, here's how you do it versus a big company. And just turn it into like a thought leadership piece that just shows everything that your customers are able to accomplish so that you're showing up as like an industry leader, as a persona leader, like if it's HR people, whatever that is. Then is really just the simple stuff of like distribute that story 100 times. Like you just need to put a different angle or a spin on it. So instead of saying, here, check out this customer story and visit this website page to read the full thing, here's this exciting snippet. Instead, if you're going to post about it, make it like super cool and like basically have it be about the program and not the product, right? Here is where you definitely focus on, wow, like customer X created this amazing educational program at their school. And by the way, your product's at the center of it, but don't talk about that until they get to the page. Then there's like continuous redistribution you can do. But these two things, the stories and the insights, are driving thought leadership, they're driving commercial insight, and then they're also driving all the kind of collateral I talked about earlier of like an implementation guide, whatever else you need to create, an evaluation criteria for your prospects so that they're not evaluating different software on their own. Like using that customer story and that those quotes, that everything you're hearing to challenge belief as a commercial insight. So today is how 20 people in your industry think about this. Our customer thinks about it this way. Here's what's changing and why they've decided to take this new approach. Letting those kinds of things like really become your compass to how you approach everything in your sales process and beyond.
You know who does this really well? This idea of like, get their story out there. Your product is one piece of their larger story. Is there's a large web development, web design, and like digital marketing firm called American Eagle. It's really random. That's the company name, but American Eagle is the name of the company. They run radio ads. And so like, for example, and I know this because, I'm in the car and I hear their radio ads. So like PF Chang's is one of their customers. And what they did for PF Chang's was basically they were able to revamp the website. So now it connects to their point of sale. So it enables online ordering, all this stuff, et cetera. The commercial is someone from PF Chang's talking about their new menu offerings. And that's the focus of the commercial. And then towards the end, it says, and we were able to add these new menu offerings to our site and connect it to our point of sale and make it really easy for customers to use with no drop off with the help of American Eagle. And then the call to action at the end is literally like, if you want, whatever their tagline is, it's like, if you want, Asian inspired eats, tasty Asian inspired eats from a Let Us Entertain You restaurant, come to PF Chang's. And if you need web design help, I recommend American Eagle. Like, it's one of the best ways I've seen this executed.
Yeah, that's co-creation, right? Like, and it shows there's something in it for the customer too. Like, that's where we usually miss the ball entirely. It's like, yeah, you're creating the story for me, right? Like, let's talk about my product all day. No, it's like to showcase their amazing work. That champion had to do potentially 6 months of implementation and really steer their company somewhere. They're the real hero in the story. We're just kind of enabling them. So that's such a great example, right? Like, that's how you show what's possible through your product. But at the end of the day, like, the customer's the one who's like doing the legwork to make it work.
Let's hit our wrap up now. First off, Sid, where can our listeners find you and where can they learn more?
For good or bad, I'm on LinkedIn. That is where I spend most of my time. Usually you can expect a daily post out of me, and even more so. So, of course, now I have a new tagline, go to customer, and who knows, maybe a newsletter comes next, but everything starts with following me on LinkedIn, Sid Khaitan.
All right. Who is one person you want to give a shout out to who has been helpful in your professional journey?
Are you just like fishing for me to compliment you, or
no? I didn't. I thought you were going to say
do a lot of guests pick you, or no?
Well, a lot
do
of
a
the
lot of
guests I don't know. I don't always know them so well beforehand. But I thought you were going to say Dan.
Dan's a good one. I just spoke to him yesterday. No, no. I won't pick you just because I feel like a lot of people do on this show anyways, and you get my recognition other ways. I'll pick my buddy Jonathan Pippick. So I met this guy um 6 months ago through like mutual friends, and he's like a product marketing influencer type of person. Like the amount of time he has just given to me, like generously, is just insane to me. Like has really helped me map out my ideas. Like I called him last Friday and I was like, hey, I just like had this thing to run by you. Like, do you have a few minutes? And the next thing you know, I'm spending like hour and a half, like just jamming with me. Here's how you can like really sharpen your perspective. And I think that's where like I started to like even seed this idea of go to customer. And
Hmm.
it's just like, and it's not just me. Like he like mentors people all the time. And I'm just like, how do you even have time for this? Um, but yeah, like in the recent timeline, I would say Jonathan's a great one. No, you know what? I should also add you. If you have a few minutes, let's just do it. So Raj is also a great influence in my life. The whole backstory I'll avoid, but basically, I learned about him 12 years ago, and I literally was like, "Yo, this guy's doing some cool stuff at Startup Hypeman. I want to work for him." And he posted a job posting, and at that time, I was working full time. I was like kind of just in my own head. I was like, I'm not good enough for this, so I passed. 10 years goes by and we're just like following each other on LinkedIn, maybe liked a few posts. And he gives me a ring and he's like, hey, like, do you want to get involved in Startup Grind, the community in Chicago that Raj is the director of, and I'm now the head of community of? And he's like, yeah, if you do this, like maybe there's some room to be on the Startup Hype Man squad in the future. So like 12 years ago, this is exactly what I wanted to do. And literally the call just came running just because I posted on LinkedIn. And since that moment, yeah, I just feel like I've learned and grown a ton because I didn't know I wanted to be in part of community. I had some like, do I really want to be doing this moments? And I was like, wow, like these people give me energy. Raj gives me energy. There's a lot of like how I've grown as I've grown in ways that I didn't think was like my bag, and now they're starting to become it. So um, yeah, this is a bad one. I think I could do a better job if I thought about it. But yeah, I would say, Raj, you're also a big influence in terms of my own career growth.
Well, thank you. Let's now give our final lessons or takeaways from today's discussion. We'll each give our top one or two takeaways. I'll go first and I'll toss it to you. The topic today was building a go to customer strategy. We covered a lot. I'm going to come to that sort of phrase that I came up with that was inspired by what you were saying, which is if your customer does not feel held, they will feel had. Sid, top one or two lessons or takeaways?
Well, you stole mine. Okay, so I came up with something good during the conversation, which I was going to steal from you. So I think what came to mind for me was as founders, we often have untested assumptions. The customer will figure this out. They know how to implement this. They'll figure out the program that fits into that our product fits into. But the only way to actually know is to talk to your customers. And when you actually start to do that, you'll start to realize like in any situation, right? Because we don't live in another human's shoes, we can't anticipate and know what they're going through and what they need to actually have the support they need. So that's kind of what I meant when I said maybe you need to create an implementation checklist. Maybe you need to create more resources for your customers because the reality is you are probably operating on untested assumptions by no fault of your own where you think the customer is okay with just having the product in their hands and they don't need any guidance. So, as to Raj's point, you need to make sure the customer feels held, not had.
My final question, which is how we end every episode of this show, fill in the blank, Sid. Entrepreneurship is blank.
Now I'm blanking. I thought I had a good one and then I lost it. Entrepreneurship is what you make it. In my situation, I mentioned I had already started something when I was like super young. Recently I kind of have been like, am I really an entrepreneur? But the reality is I am. Even with what I do as a whatever, working with Startup Hypeman, working full time.
You're also a DJ. We didn't cover that. My bad.
I'm a DJ. I have my own little mini freelance business as well. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, and the faster you own it, with any opportunity you can, and you identify with it, the faster you'll see the person you want to become. So entrepreneurship is owning it. And I forgot what I said already. Whatever the first thing was I said.
What you make it.
Entrepreneurship is what you make it and how you own it.
He is Sid Khaitan. He is all of the things we have talked about, and he had one hell of a discussion with me today on the Goat to Market show. Sid, thank you for joining.
Thanks, Raj. This was fun.
For everyone listening, if you want to get in on the party, if you had questions for Sid while you were listening and you couldn't ask them because, you're on wherever you are in the world listening to this podcast, do not worry, because in the first week of this episode's air date, Sid is jumping into our online community, the Goat to Market Club, and doing a follow-up Ask Me Anything. So if you want to ask about more go-to-customer questions, you can ask that. If you want to ask Sid about what it was like to get a 35 on the ACT, you can ask that. If you want to ask Sid what it was like to get a 0.38 GPA in college, you can ask that. And if you want to ask him the best recommendations he has for setting a party off with the right music, you can ask him all about that. It's an Ask Me Anything going on the first week after this episode airs. You can join our online community, the Goat to Market Club, at startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. And that link is also available in the show bio. We will catch you next week on Startup Hype Man's Goat to Market show. That'll put a bow on this one. Before we head out of here, a couple quick housekeeping items. Number one, did you like what you heard? Well, give us a subscribe and a follow. Maybe share it with one friend who you think would find this valuable. Number two, remember that Ask Me Anything I told you about at the end of the episode? That goes down exclusively inside of Goat to Market Club, our online founder and startup community. And you can access it for free. Your membership is 100% free at startuphypeman.com/GTM-club. Number three, need pitch help? Startup Hype Man is your man. Whether it's a fundraising narrative or a go-to-market or category narrative, we've got you covered to make sure you have messaging that doesn't help you just go to market, but of course, what? Helps you become the GOAT to market. All right, we will see you next week here on the Goat to Market show. Thank you for listening. And remember, why be a unicorn when you can be the GOAT?